Welcome to the Explainer. Now, if you work in browser automation, you know the struggle, right? Flaky tests, the endless debugging, and pipelines that just randomly crash at like 4:59 p.m. on a Friday. It's the absolute worst. Today, we're unpacking a highly anticipated release that aims to fix that exact nightmare. We're talking about chrome-devtools-cli version 1.0.0. Let's dive in and see how this milestone fundamentally upgrades your testing workflows.
For years, web testing has felt, honestly, a lot like navigating a chaotic, completely unpredictable maze. You hit these dead ends where tests pass locally but totally fail in CI, you struggle with clunky config files that break for absolutely no reason, and you constantly fight these hidden performance bottlenecks that only decide to show up right before a major deployment. It's exhausting. But version 1.0.0 show, it finally engineers a clear path straight through that complexity. It literally turns that frustrating maze into a straight, predictable highway.
Here's our agenda for today. First, the version 1 milestone. Second, rebuilding the core architecture. Third, powerful new emulation tools. And finally, number 4, performance and reliability upgrades.
All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the version 1 milestone.
You know, hitting a version 1.0.0 is a major statement of stability. And looking at the sheer scope of this release, it's very clear why. We're looking at a dense web of features, everything from deeply refactored code to brand new mobile emulation capabilities. But the real insight here? It's the architecture. Every single capability, whether we're talking about geolocation or telemetry, now branches from a unified central core. This isn't just some random grab bag of updates bolted together over a weekend. No, it is a cohesive, carefully planned ecosystem. It's designed so that every feature, every single command speaks the exact same language and relies on the exact same logic.
Moving right along to section 2, rebuilding the core architecture. So under the hood, the dev team made a massive structural shift. They completely tore down the old monolithic main.rs file approach. I mean, if you've ever had to hunt down a bug in a multi-thousand-line monolithic script, you know the absolute nightmare of spaghetti code, overlapping dependencies, and those terrifying merge conflicts. It's the kind of code where fixing a typo in one place inexplicably breaks a login flow somewhere else. Well, by refactoring into a streamlined, library-first foundation built around lib.rs, the tool becomes infinitely more modular, it makes the codebase easier to maintain, vastly easier to scale, and far less prone to completely shattering when just a single line is changed.
And this library-first shift introduced something incredibly important. It's called the command executor pattern. You can think of it kind of like the central nervous system of the CLI. Previously, different commands might have handled their own execution logic in these fragmented, unpredictable ways, sort of like an orchestra playing without a conductor. But now, everything flows cleanly through this optimized executor. It acts as the stable bedrock that ensures robust, predictable task execution across the board. Every input is handled exactly the same way, which is the exact reason the tool can now confidently support the advanced capabilities we're about to explore.
That brings us to section 3, powerful new emulation tools. With that rock-solid foundation in place, version 1.0.0 introduces an incredibly versatile set of emulation tools. You now have direct support for precise viewport dimensions, which is awesome because it lets you instantly verify responsive layouts without relying on those clunky window resizing hacks. But the control goes so much deeper than just screen sizes. Imagine you need to test a mobile user logging in from a crowded cafe in Paris using a very specific device type. Previously, that required stitching together a mess of third-party tools, proxy workarounds, and honestly, cross fingers. Now, you can spoof exact geolocation coordinates using latitude and longitude and inject custom HTTP headers directly from the CLI. It transforms what used to be a frustrating, multi-step chore into a single, elegant line of code. But what makes these new tools so remarkably powerful isn't just that they exist, but rather how they integrate into the system. These aren't fragile bolt-on afterthoughts or third-party plugins that might just break the next time Chrome updates. Because of that new command executor pattern we just discussed, features like geolocation overrides and custom headers branch natively from the centralized core. They run with native speed, native reliability, and zero friction, completely avoiding the overhead that usually comes with expanding a testing environment. It's a real game changer.
There's also a subtle but incredibly impactful usability update here for developers who spend their days deep in the code. Frequently used commands like close page and select page now accept a single optional argument simply called ID_or_index. Now, it might seem like just a minor syntax tweak at first glance, right? But when you are writing hundreds or even thousands of lines of automation scripts, shaving off unnecessary boilerplate syntax is huge. It makes your code cleaner, easier to review, and quite frankly, much less tedious to write.
Let's move into our final area, Section 4, Performance and Reliability Upgrades.
One of the most vital, unseen upgrades in this release is how the tool actually handles its own data. Historically, collecting telemetry meant your main execution thread had to literally pause, report the data, wait for confirmation, and then finally resume. Essentially, you were heavily taxing your pipeline speed just to get logs. Well, the dev team completely rewrote this system to use a dedicated background worker for non-blocking I/O. In practice, this means your automated tests fly at absolute maximum speed on the main thread, while the background worker silently gathers all the analytics in parallel. You get all the crucial debugging insights you desperately need without paying a single ounce of performance tax.
But let's be real, raw speed is completely useless without reliability. As your tests run at this new accelerated pace, version 1.0.0 introduces dynamic sync checks to keep everything grounded. You can think of these checks like a highly attentive spotter in a gym, constantly monitoring the alignment between your CLI definitions and the actual executor arguments being passed around. If a parameter happens to fall out of sync during a highly complex, fast-paced test run, the system catches it dynamically and intervenes right before a failure happens. It ensures your testing environment stays perfectly aligned, virtually eliminating those mysterious, hair-pulling crashes caused by unexpected parameter mismatches.
So bringing it all together, we can look back at that chaotic labyrinth of browser testing we started with. By deeply rebuilding the architecture around a library-first design, injecting powerful native emulation tools, and totally isolating telemetry for maximum speed, version 1.0.0 draws a straight, engineered line right through the center of the maze. It takes a process that used to be a frustrating, anxiety-inducing game of trial and error and transforms it into a highly reliable, predictable science.
As you start integrating these new capabilities into your own daily workflows, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. With the maze finally cleared by this robust update and all of these incredibly precise, native controls right at your fingertips, what will you automate next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.